The British Prime Minister Theresa May survives a no-confidence vote in Parliament, and she now appeals to lawmakers from across the political divide to come together to break the Brexit impasse. The ex-Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo set to remain behind bars after the ICC cleared him of wrongdoing in post-election violence almost a decade ago, this while the prosecution prepares an appeal. And an IS group claimed suicide bombing in northern Syria kills at least 16 people, including 2 US troops and 2 American civilians, just weeks after Donald Trump announced the group had been defeated and is withdrawing his forces. For those of you just tuning in, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Rocott. The British Prime Minister has survived a no-confidence vote in the House of Commons by 325 votes to 306. The result came largely as expected, and now the real work starts again as she tries to get a Brexit divorce deal through Parliament following an historic defeat on Tuesday. Theresa May says she now hopes to hold cross-party talks, although the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, has ruled out meeting her unless she drops the possibility of a no-deal Brexit.
From tomorrow, meetings will be taking place between senior government representatives, including myself, and groups of MPs who represent the widest possible range of views from across Parliament, including our confidence and supply partners, the Democratic Unionist Party. I am disappointed that the leader of the Labour Party has not so far chosen to take part, but our door remains open.
Now, after suffering the biggest government defeat in modern parliamentary history on Tuesday and facing a vote of no confidence a day later, Theresa May appeared remarkably unfazed. And despite a call by the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, to do the right thing and step down, as he said, her position as Prime Minister seems as solid as ever. Emerald Maxwell now takes a look at Theresa May's staying power.
To hear it from the British press, the failure is all Theresa May's. The day after Parliament rejected her government's Brexit deal, the attacks came from left and right, agreeing that her defeat meant she should no longer be leading the country. But if Theresa May is discouraged by this historic rejection, for now it doesn't seem to have impacted her will to carry on. It's also hardly the first storm May has weathered since coming to power just 2.5 years ago, both in Europe and at home. May took the reins in 2016 after David Cameron lost the EU referendum he had called. Despite previously campaigning against Brexit, on taking office, she quickly adapted her message, becoming its cheerleader.
Brexit means Brexit.
On March 29, 2017, she began the divorce process with Europe, the start of a long, hard battle. First with Brussels. The 27 agreed to a divorce, but London would have to foot the bill, a bill of more than 40 billion euros. After a lot of compromise, May presented them with her Chequers plan in October 2018, suggesting the UK retains access to the single market. Brussels' answer, a resounding no.
So we are at an impasse, and I have always said, no deal is better than a bad deal.
Finally, an agreement was reached in November, after 1.5 years of negotiations. But for Theresa May, the toughest battles have been within British borders. Criticised for her lack of leadership, she took a gamble, organising early elections in June 2017. A gamble she lost, along with her Conservative Party's majority in Parliament.
Thank you.
Her position looked precarious again in summer 2018, amid a string of resignations from her cabinet over her Brexit strategy, not least from Foreign Secretary and ardent Brexiteer Boris Johnson.
The problem is not that we failed to make the case for a free trade agreement of the kind spelt out at Lancaster House. We haven't even tried. We must try now, because we will not get another chance to get it right.
Calls for a change of leadership or a second referendum began to grow. Weakened but still fighting, Theresa May sought to soften her image. But a little boogie in front of members of her party did little to win them over. A few days before Christmas, the Conservatives triggered a vote of no confidence against her, yet another challenge she managed to survive. Theresa May is seemingly unsinkable, but few others perhaps would want her job.
Moving on to other news now, and the ex-Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo is spending another night behind bars in The Hague while prosecutors file a last-ditch challenge. On Tuesday, the International Criminal Court ordered that he and close aide Charles Blé Gourdé be immediately freed after it cleared them of any role in post-election violence in 2010 and 2011, in which some 3,000 people died. Alison Sargent has the story.
All day, his supporters had been celebrating his imminent release, but Laurent Gbagbo isn't leaving jail just yet. Late Wednesday, prosecutors at the International Criminal Court made a final bid to keep the former Ivorian leader in custody until his case is appealed. Prosecutors say that Gbagbo and his one-time youth leader, Charles Blé Gourdé, could refuse to return and face prison if their acquittal is overturned. But this argument from prosecutors was already rejected by a first panel of judges on Wednesday.
This is an acquittal before the defense has even presented any evidence. It shows, in the view of the majority, how exceptionally weak the prosecutor's evidence is.
The defendants were acquitted on Tuesday of crimes against humanity in connection with a wave of post-election violence in 2010 and 2011, which saw some 3,000 people killed in Ivory Coast after Gbagbo refused to concede defeat against now President Alassane Ouattara. In Abidjan, Gbagbo's acquittal was met by some with outcry.
I lost my tooth in the post-election protests because of the Gbagbo camp. I can't accept that Gbagbo and Blé Gourdé have been freed. Let them stay in jail.
We're here to show that we're angry. We don't agree with the ICC's verdict.
Elsewhere in the country's capital, Gbagbo's family and supporters celebrated his acquittal.
I want to thank the Ivorians and all the Africans around the world who worked so hard to get this result.
During the trial, Gbagbo spent more than 7 years in custody, and his daughter says if he's set free, he will come back to Ivory Coast. The ex-leader remains an influential figure in his FPI political party, and many of his supporters are hoping he'll return to politics.
Some 600 people have been arrested in Zimbabwe amid a harsh crackdown against protests there. Armed police detained those taking part in a third day of demonstrations against what has become the world's highest petrol prices, and a doctors' group said it treated more than 60 gunshot wounds and well over 100 injuries caused by strikes from boots, batons and sharp objects. An Islamic State group claimed suicide bombing in Manbij, Syria, has killed at least 16 people. Of them, 2 are US troops and 2 American civilians. It comes just weeks after Donald Trump announced he is withdrawing US forces from the country, claiming the jihadist fighters have been defeated. Nadia Massi has the details.
President Donald Trump said the fight against the Islamic State group in Syria had been won. But that's not how it looks in the northeast town of Manbij this Wednesday. The suicide bomb, the deadliest attack on Americans in Syria since their deployment began in 2015. The attack was claimed by the IS group, but so far, in public at least, the White House isn't rolling back on their claim the Islamic State group have been defeated. This was Mike Pence shortly after the confirmation that American lives had been lost.
And we are bringing our troops home. The caliphate has crumbled and ISIS has been defeated. This president has often spoken about his desire to bring an end to endless wars in America and the ability to bring our troops home.
Those assurances will relieve the Turkish president, who's keen to see American troops out.
The attack could be designed to influence the decision that Mr. Trump took. But because I saw Trump's determination to withdraw troops, I believe that he will not take a step back in the face of such terrorism.
It's clear then what Turkey wants: US withdrawal from Syria, leaving the path open to targeting Kurdish groups who are key allies of the Americans but long-standing enemies of Ankara. But what isn't clear is how the Trump administration will respond to the biggest loss of American life in Syria since their operations began.
To Spain now, where the Conservative Popular Party candidate has been invested as the head of the regional government in Andalusia. Well, for well over 3 decades, the socialists had held the region in the deep south, but the PP's Juan Manuel Moreno secured victory, that with the help of 12 votes from the controversial new far-right party Vox. Let's take a look.
Andalusia was once the socialist heartland of Spain. But this Wednesday, it was the Conservative Juan Manuel Moreno who was sworn in as the region's president. Moreno secured a majority thanks to Vox, a far-right party which has never governed here before.
We represent those Andalusian and Spanish people that saw how their values were thrown overboard by the impositions of the totalitarian left. Vox has come to recover those values and principles, pure and simple.
That Vox will be effectively kingmakers in Andalusia has alarmed a host of minority groups. A large women's march was held in front of the region's parliament on Tuesday. Thousands taking to the streets over the party's plans to scrap tough laws against gender-based violence.
Fascism is entering the Andalusian parliament and we cannot allow it. Not as women, not as human beings, not as people. They want to get rid of all of our rights.
The leadership of Vox had previously made scrapping those gender laws a condition for supporting Moreno's government. It's since dropped the demand, but slashing funding for abortion and cracking down on illegal migration remain in their manifesto.
The French Court of Cassation has upheld a 2-year jail sentence against ex-President Nicolas Sarkozy's former aide for misappropriation of funds. Claude Guéant had challenged the ruling that he misused €210,000 from a secret police fund to pay for police informers. It's unclear whether he will serve any time in prison, as short sentences can be adjusted in France, though he has been ordered to pay €75,000 and banned from holding office for 5 years. And staying in France, the parliamentary inquiry into one of President Emmanuel Macron's former top security aides continued on Wednesday. There have been several new revelations in the Senate as Macron's cabinet director testified in the so-called Benalla affair. Brian Quinn has the details.
The plot thickens. In a Senate hearing Wednesday, the Macron government suggested former security aide Alexandre Benalla had falsified documents to obtain an official service passport. According to Macron's cabinet director Patrick Stroda, Benalla apparently used a note on the chief of staff's letterhead to get the passport.
We asked the chief of staff at the time if he was the one who sent the document to the Interior Ministry, and he was not the author of the note. So, as we suspect a falsification on the part of Benalla, we have alerted public prosecutors.
Wednesday morning, French newspaper Le Canard Enchaîné revealed the existence of 2 official service passports in Benalla's name. Along with his 3 diplomatic versions, that makes 5 official travel documents for the security aide. Benalla was fired in July after being caught on tape beating protesters while wearing police gear. In previous testimony, he claimed to have returned all of his official passports. But some have apparently been used multiple times since then, including as Benalla traveled to Chad and Congo-Brazzaville to launch new business operations.
We now know that Mr. Benalla used his passports almost 20 times between August 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018.
Benalla is also accused of holding on to an encrypted government cell phone that has access to highly classified defense material. The phone and 2 diplomatic passports were only returned on January 11th, voluntarily by Benalla's lawyers. The affair has been a series of headaches for Macron's administration, forced to admit that the president and his former bodyguard had exchanged messages after he was fired. Benalla is expected to testify before the French Senate on Monday.
Stay tuned to France 24. More news headlines coming up in 15 minutes.